David Ignatius, it is astounding, though I know it to be the case. It is astounding that inside the White House, they are still bitching and moaning. The only words that come to my mind right now, bitching and moaning about doctors and scientists overestimating the impact of this pandemic. When Donald Trump has said in January it was going to be one person, then it was going to go away to zero, one person from China. In February, he said it was 15 people, then it was going to go down to zero. March, he said it was magically going to be going away, kept saying it was going to go away in April when it warmed up. We know what happened in April. More people died in April than died in Vietnam. Then in April, the president also started talking about hydroxychloroquine or whatever, so much so that finally his own government had to warn Americans against taking it because it caused heart problems. The president then moved on to disinfectants and sticking lights inside of bodies. The government then the next day had to warn people against that. The president was then saying this wasn't going to come back in the fall. There wasn't going to be a second wave. Time and time again, they have underestimated the severity of this pandemic. That's still going on inside of the White House, David. You've been around D.C. for a while. I've got to ask you, John Meacham style, is there any historical precedent to this that you know that a White House still 5 months later, 70,000 deaths in, still oblivious to the danger looming out there and talking about the economy like the economy is not going to be affected by a doubling of deaths between now and June the 1st?
We've had terrible crises, obviously the Civil War, World War II. The quality of leadership that we had then was extraordinary, not least in the ability of Presidents Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt to keep the public focused on its task, on the grim task that lay ahead. Neither Lincoln nor FDR ever tried to minimize the degree of suffering and sacrifice that was required, quite the opposite. Franklin Roosevelt in 1942, really on his own, went to meet with his allies and said, our goal in this war is unconditional surrender of our adversaries. That was at a time when the Brits, others thought maybe we can cut some deal with the Germans, maybe we can get out of this, with some sort of settlement. FDR said no, unconditional surrender. And everybody knew that was leadership. We knew what leadership felt like. President Trump treats most things as if they're about him. As if there's bad news, it's the fake news media. If somebody puts an ad up, he wants to attack them by name and impugn their character. It's about him. It's not about the crisis. And I just would close by saying the obvious. We live in a democracy. In China, you've got to put up with President Xi Jinping for life. He's not going anywhere. But we live in a democracy. We get to elect our leaders. If they're not doing well, if governors are doing a poor job in managing this pandemic, the publics in those states can find better leadership. Same thing with us as a nation. As citizens, our behavior is going to determine what the shape of this curve is. If people act responsibly, if people keep social distancing, we'll keep the level of deaths down. So hopefully they'll be not as bad as these latest models. But I'm coming back to what my colleague Gene Robinson said. It's in our hands in this new normal. We get to make the choices. We get to shape the country. We get, in a sense, to shape the future of the disease.
It's in our hands, Mika, and the economy will survive because we have no choice. Our country will move forward because we have no choice. But unfortunately, the pathway forward is doing that, as we heard earlier today, as the CEO of Ford said, as we're hearing from governors, on our own. The president has abandoned us. He's abandoned reality.
I don't think he was ever there.
He's been lying. He's been lying about death counts since January the 22nd in Davos, in that CNBC interview.
Yeah.
He continues to lie even now. We're on our own. And I just want to say, and I know we disagree on this, I think Americans are doing a pretty damn good job with social distancing. I see pictures. People take pictures from the air of New Yorkers in Central Park, and they'll become enraged. And then you go down and you look. Most people are social distancing. It's the same with a lot of the beach shots where people are absolutely enraged. I know there's some beach shots where they aren't, but the same thing with beach shots where people are enraged when a helicopter takes a picture. Then you get down low and you see there are clusters of families about 6 to 10 feet apart.
It was the spring breakers.
Yeah, it was the spring breakers, obviously bad. But I just want to say, I talked to a good friend in Pensacola yesterday, a supporter of Donald Trump, and we were just talking about a lot of things. We're very concerned about businesses in Pensacola because what I heard, I asked about how a lot of my friends with small businesses there were doing if they were getting the PPP aid, and the answer was no, that the really big companies, the people that had millions of dollars in the banks, the law firms,
yeah,
they were all getting benefits. That small business owners, people that own family restaurants, people that were struggling paycheck to paycheck, they weren't getting the help. But at the end of the conversation, he said to me, he goes, you know, Joe, the thing that really has surprised me the most, he said, sometimes in natural disasters, when hurricanes come through, you see the worst of people. Everybody's fighting to get people fixing their roofs. He said, this has brought out the best in people, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, whether they like Trump or don't like Trump. This has brought out the best in Americans. We're all working together, and people are respectful. I take my child out, and people are staying 6, 10 feet apart. Yeah. We're wearing masks. We're doing what we need to do to protect our families and to protect others. And I don't think we can ever overlook that fact that most 70%, 80%, 85% of Americans, 90% of Americans are on our side. And by ours, I mean your side and my side. It's the 5 or 10% that are going and trying to take over state legislatures with guns that, you know, Sean Hannity spoke out about last night. Willie?
Yeah, I just wanted to sprinkle in because it fits right into what you're saying right now. A Washington Post, University of Maryland poll just crossed that supports exactly what you're saying. It shows among Americans, not Democrats, among Americans, Democrats and Republicans, 82% of Americans say they should not be allowed to open movie theaters in their state. 78% say don't reopen gyms. 74% say don't open dine-in restaurants or nail salons. You can go down the list. Those are large majorities, again, of Democrats and Republicans, all Americans taking this very seriously, understanding how serious this is. So, again, as you look at those small groups of protesters outside state capitals, remember, they're not representative of a big number of people. In fact, no. Across the political spectrum, Americans get this, and they are being responsible. And when we get through this, it will be because Americans of all political stripes took it seriously and confronted what is a pandemic. Let's bring in.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.